The biggest mistake we can make is assuming Lukas left the legacy vault with a single piece of information. Nothing about his behavior suggests he discovered one hidden file or one classified document. His reaction is far too immediate, and Bernard's response is far too dramatic.
I need you to look like we are having a serious conversation. Just listen.
Lukas walks into that room, believing the legacy contains answers about the silo. He walks out realizing the legacy is the silo. Everything Bernard spent years protecting suddenly makes sense once you understand that the vault isn't simply an archive of history. It's the operating manual for humanity's future. The books, the records, the conversations with the algorithm.
Before you, only 3 people have reached this door.
They're all pieces of a machine that has been running for centuries, quietly deciding who leads, who remembers, and who becomes expendable. That's why Lukas doesn't argue with Bernard. He doesn't need to. The truth is bigger than either of them. Look closely at what happens after Bernard hears Lukas whisper. He doesn't gather his allies. He doesn't prepare for war. He doesn't order another cover-up. Instead, he begins tying up loose ends. He gives Camille access to the legacy. He rushes after Juliet. He acts less like the head of IT and more like someone carrying out the final steps of a process that had already begun before he even entered the vault. That's an important distinction because Bernard has never been portrayed as someone who gives up. Throughout the series, he's always believed that with enough planning, every crisis can be managed. Yet, after speaking with Lukas, that confidence disappears completely. The only explanation that fits Bernard's character is that he learned something that proved his choices no longer mattered. Here's where the puzzle starts fitting together. The algorithm doesn't appear to function like a traditional artificial intelligence waiting for instructions. It behaves like a system constantly evaluating outcomes, measuring stability, and adjusting variables whenever the silo drifts away from its intended path. Bernard wasn't fired because he made one mistake. He became obsolete because the system determined that another leader could restore order more effectively. That's exactly why Camille rises so quickly. She's not rewarded for ambition. She's selected because she represents predictability. Every decision she makes reinforces stability. She follows procedure without hesitation. She protects the narrative without questioning whether the narrative is true. From the algorithm's perspective, those qualities are infinitely more valuable than charisma or intelligence. That completely changes how we should view Juliet's storyline. At first, her missing memories feel like another mystery waiting to be solved. But what if they aren't the mystery at all? What if they're the solution? Think about it. The algorithm never tries to erase Juliet as a person. It only suppresses the experiences that threaten the system. She still remembers Walker. She still remembers Mechanical. She still remembers who she is. What she struggles to hold on to are the discoveries she made after leaving the silo. That level of precision isn't accidental. It's targeted. The algorithm isn't destroying her identity. It's removing the evidence that could spread from one mind to an entire population. That's a far more efficient way to preserve control than violence ever could be. Now go back to the founding timeline. Daniel, Helen, Charlotte, and the other figures from centuries earlier aren't simply showing us how civilization ended. They're showing us how civilization was redesigned. The founders didn't just build underground shelters. They built a philosophy, a belief that humanity survives only when information is controlled, history is edited, and difficult truths are locked away from future generations. The silos are physical structures, but they're also psychological ones. Every resident is born inside a carefully constructed version of reality. They don't question the rules because they don't know another version of history ever existed. The algorithm simply continues enforcing the same philosophy the founders established centuries before. That explains why the legacy is treated with almost religious importance. Bernard never guards it because it's valuable technology. He guards it because it contains the original blueprint for the entire system. Lukas entering that vault isn't like someone opening a classified file. It's like someone reading the first chapter of history after spending his entire life with only the last page. Suddenly, every contradiction makes sense. The cleanings, the pact, judicial, the surveillance, the secrecy surrounding the outside world. They're not separate policies created by different leaders. They're components of one design that has remained largely unchanged for generations. And then one person breaks that design. Juliet. Not because she starts a rebellion. Not because she defeats Bernard. Not because she escapes. She breaks it because she introduces uncertainty into a system that depends on certainty. Before Juliet, every cleaning ended the same way. Every story about the outside confirmed the same belief. Every generation inherited the same understanding of reality. Juliet becomes the first living contradiction. She walks beyond the hill. She sees the neighboring silos. She proves the story is incomplete. From that moment forward, the algorithm faces a problem it cannot solve through ordinary means. It can't simply execute Juliet because martyrs inspire questions. It can't allow her complete freedom because witnesses create movements. So it chooses the one option that protects the system while preserving the illusion of humanity. It lets her live, but it tries to separate her from the truth she carries. And that's why Lukas may be the most important character in Season 3. Juliet discovers the truth through experience. Bernard protects the truth through secrecy. Camille protects it through obedience. But Lukas understands the truth through knowledge. He's the first person to see the structure beneath every lie. Once he understands how the algorithm actually works, every mystery we've been chasing starts pointing toward the same answer. The greatest threat to the silos has never been the poisoned world outside. It's the possibility that someone inside finally understands why the silos were built in the first place. So the biggest twist of Season 3 isn't that Juliet forgot. It isn't that Camille took Bernard's place. It isn't even that the algorithm has been making decisions from the shadows. The biggest twist is that Lukas may already know the one truth capable of bringing the entire system down. And if that's true, then the whisper that changed Bernard forever wasn't a warning about what was coming next. It was the moment one generation finally learned the secret the founders buried centuries ago. Now the only question is this: if the legacy contains the real history of humanity, how long can the algorithm keep that history buried before someone else starts remembering what the world was never supposed to forget? There's one more detail that quietly supports this theory, and it has nothing to do with Lukas or Bernard. It has to do with how the show frames knowledge itself. Every character who gets close to the truth ends up isolated. George dies after discovering forbidden information. Allison is sent outside after questioning the silo's history. Juliet is stripped of her memories after surviving the impossible. Lukas disappears after entering the legacy vault. These aren't random tragedies happening to different characters. They're the same pattern repeating over and over again. The system doesn't fear rebellion nearly as much as it fears discovery. Rebellions can be defeated with force. Discovery spread from one person to another until the official version of reality begins to collapse under its own weight. That also changes the way we should look at the legacy itself. Most viewers see it as a vault full of answers, but what if its true purpose is the exact opposite? What if the legacy exists to decide which answers survive and which ones disappear forever? Think about its name. A legacy isn't just a record of the past. It's something intentionally passed from one generation to the next. That means someone, centuries earlier, made deliberate choices about what future leaders would know and what they would never be allowed to learn. Bernard believed he inherited absolute authority when he became head of IT. Lukas, discovery suggests he inherited something very different, a carefully limited version of the truth, with the algorithm deciding how much each generation was allowed to see. The show also keeps returning to one powerful visual idea without drawing attention to it. Characters are constantly looking through glass, computer screens, surveillance monitors, or reinforced windows. They believe they're seeing reality, but they're always seeing it through another layer first. Even the cafeteria display presents an edited version of the outside world. That visual language isn't accidental. It reflects the central theme of Silo. Every truth is filtered before it reaches the people living inside. Juliet's journey is so important because she's the first major character to step beyond every filter. She doesn't watch the outside through a screen. She experiences it herself. That makes her memories more valuable than any file hidden inside the legacy vault, because they represent first-hand evidence the algorithm can no longer completely control. If all of this is true, then the conflict in Season 3 isn't really about reclaiming the silo or defeating a corrupt leader. It's about reclaiming history itself. Juliet's memories, Lukas' discovery, and the founders' hidden timeline are all different pieces of the same puzzle. One character carries the evidence, another understands the system, and the audience is watching those two paths slowly move toward each other. When Juliet finally begins recovering what was taken from her, and Lukas finally reveals what he learned inside the legacy, those separate mysteries won't just answer old questions. They'll expose the original purpose behind the silos and force every surviving character to confront the truth that has been buried for generations. And that's why Lukas may ultimately become the most dangerous person alive, not because he has weapons, political power, or control over the algorithm, but because he possesses something the system was never designed to contain forever: understanding. The founders could seal people underground. They could poison the surface. They could build an algorithm to monitor every decision and erase inconvenient memories. But history has one weakness that no machine can eliminate. Once enough people discover the truth independently, control begins to unravel from the inside. And if Lukas already knows how the entire system was designed to function, then the whisper that shattered Bernard's confidence may end up becoming the first crack in a centuries-old lie that was never meant to be broken.